that bad link that I had to slap together. I forgot to record it, so apologies to everybody. That one is off into the ether, never to be heard again. So Jess, why don't we start today by having you explain to us, what the project is, how it came to you, and kind of what your ideas are for it, what you'd hope to achieve with it, and maybe where you even see it kind of living if it does get a chance to get produced.
Okay. I got the idea. I used to teach high school English, and I taught the Canterbury Tales every year to a big group of seniors. And I always thought every single time I would do it, because I read it myself, every time I taught it, I relived the stories. And I always thought it'd make a wonderful TV series. And so when I started screenwriting, I was finished with my feature and I was looking for a new project. And I'd pitched the concept to a producer. He did a pass on my feature, but he asked me what else I had. And so I pitched him just this idea about adapting the Canterbury Tales for a TV series. And he's from the UK. And so he automatically he was on board. And he wanted me to go ahead and start working on it. So we declared it as he was unofficially attached to the project. And since then, he's gone off to do bigger and better things. Maybe not better, but I really am not in contact with him at all, even though we have the same manager. So that's kind of odd. But or he's the one that got me my manager because of the Canterbury Tales. So, uh, anyways, so what I've done is I've taken the original storyline. There are a bunch of pilgrims that were sent to Canterbury to visit the shrine of St. Thomas a Becket in hopes that by making this pilgrimage, which is a holy journey, that would in fact lift the sins and the curse of the plague, because that's what they believed happened. My take on it is very simple. Oh, and then the telling of the tales was merely to pass time. So Geoffrey Chaucer decided that each pilgrim was going to tell two tales, one on the way back and one on the way, or one on the way there and one on the way back, and he recorded the tales. He never got to finish his book. They never did the second tales. There's only a chronicle of the first ones. So what my spin is the exact same thing, except for it's got a supernatural twist. And instead of the tales being these individual tales that have nothing to do with the A story, because the A story is them going on the pilgrimage and the things that happen along the way. Each episode will be a tale told, or maybe not each episode, but almost each episode would be the telling of one tale, but they would be telling the backstory of their lives. So the second episode for this series would be the knight telling the story of his past and how he came to becoming a knight, and we learned certain things in that story. So that would be considered, I'm calling it the B story for now. So episode 2 would be really the B story of the knight. But while that's going on, we get what's going on in the present A story, which you find weaves the storyline. And so it's like, while the knight is telling us about him raising his son, which is also the squire, we learned that his wife had died, which was the squire's mother, while the son gets kidnapped by centaurs. We come to find out that the woman who's a sorceress is and leader of the centaurs is actually the squire's mother, and he's reunited with her. And so we see in the A story that happening while the knight is telling us that he thinks his wife is killed. And so each episode is going, like, their stories, the stories will end up weaving together. And so that's pretty much the concept. The midpoint is going to be a battle between some good guys, and then our good guy, or some our good guys and some bad guys, and then the finale is going to be that they reach Canterbury, but they discover that Saint Thomas A. Becket has been possessed by a demon, who just happens to be named Pizazu.
Okay, cool. I'm just scribbling down some notes as you talk there. And where do you think this thing might live if it saw the light of day? If it got produced, where would you like to see it actually offered to the public?
I would like Amazon, just because one of my comparables is Good Omens. So I think it'd be well received there. I had one producer slash actress. It was in 2022. Yeah. It was like, I think it was the fall of 2022. She had read it and she thought it would fit well on HBO. So yeah, I mean, that's really all I've thought about as far as, I mean, yeah, because of the comparables. And then I had one person recommend HBO, but that's really the top of, or I guess the length that I've thought about it.
Yeah, sure. Well, if it's going to be on a premier streaming platform, then
I do think streaming rather than network.
Yeah.
I see it, and another reason why I say Amazon is I see it being a 8 to 10 episode season.
Yeah, that was my
And
next
so
question.
I know Amazon's big about 8 to 10 episodes. Netflix every now and then will do 10 episodes, but it seems like Amazon's really known for the 8 to 10. And network, network is what, 15 to 25 episodes?
Yeah, under the current production kind of rules, that's turned into quite a bit of a hell to go that far every year. And that's getting more and more unusual too. Yeah, 8 to 10 sounds good. The last couple that I've worked on have been 8s. Just happened to be, and I find that using what's known as the expanded sequence map. Is anybody familiar with the sequence method of structuring a story?
No, I've been using well, I've been reading a lot on Script Reader Pro. Screencraft has got some really good, and then like just about like how to develop your B story, your C story, how that should be all seen in your pilot.
Yeah,
And I've been looking over Save the Cat, or Blake Snyder does, or Jamie Nash actually did cat rights, Save the Cat rights for TV.
Yeah. That's all good stuff. And yeah, the sequence method is always eight sequences. It was designed to be used for closed-ended like features, but I experimented with it on the first series that I was working on with a client, and using it as a basic template to break out each of the 8 episodes worked out really, really nicely. And then you can focus on each episode using that same template as well. Because there's a bunch of them out there, like the 3, the 5, the 7, the 9 act kind of structures for 1-hour television. I don't know if I need as many as 9. Even 3 or 5 works really, really good in my mind. And then you play around with the cold open and the closing teaser, just little buttons on both ends. Okay, that sounds really, really good. And at what point are you in the development of it? How much have you actually got written, or is it just outlines, or what have you got?
I've got the pilot fully written. I'm probably on draft 6 of the pilot. And then I've got episode 2 written. And I got probably at draft 3 on episode 2, but I learned that it's better to have the whole season flushed out rather than the second episode written. And
Yep.
so I'm just bouncing between revisions on the new draft, and then been playing a lot with dialogue. And then me and my co-writer plan on, once we have this draft where we want it, once we have this draft where we want it, we're going to start flushing out more of the season and developing, seeing how those B and C stories are going to play out and how they're going to plug into the A story, because each individual episode is what we don't have figured out. We have an idea of where our turning point episodes are going to be, but the ones in between are the ones we need to flush out. But the pilot, I think, is in a really good spot.
Well, yeah, with 6 drafts, I would think it's pretty tight by now. Yeah. So the trick is, and nothing to be worried about, but if you do put that much work into the pilot episode without having really figured out the rest of the season, then you might have to go back and make alterations to the pilot to match the rest of the season arcs when you get there. Again, nothing to worry about or anything like that, but I would typically recommend getting your outline for the entire season really, really tight, at least in the on a mechanical level. This happens, and making sure that every episode kind of informs every other episode, that there's that nice consistency throughout the entire season, and that you've got solid, consistent, kind of cohesive thematics that run all the way through it, and any other kind of motifs that you're playing with are all there as well. And then you can go away and kind of know which chunk of the story you can fully develop and write out completely for your pilot.
We have a rough sketch of what each episode's going to be. Like we share the Trello website, and so for each episode we have a log line for that episode, and then which characters are going to be in it, and kind of a rough sketch of what that plot is going to look like in that. And so we're able to directly tie them all together, and being able to see each episode in a column right next to each other has really helped out. So we've got a rough sketch of what each episode's going to be. And so as we're flushing it out, we're cross-referencing and making sure we drop the right seeds in the pilot, and making sure. And then when we did the theme for your lab, that workshop really worked well, because we were able to establish some themes and then make sure those are coming out in each episode.
That's great. That's cool. Okay, well, you sound like you're well on your way. So then what would you say are the weak links? Where do you think it needs the most works, or what are you most concerned about right now?
How each episode's going to tie into, how each episode's going to tie into the overall plot. Like, I feel like A Knight's Tale was really easy, but the next one, I don't know. I feel like once we start, it really would be how each episode is going to tie into the main story, to the A story.
Yeah. I like one of the more common strategies is that you've got 3 to 5 arcs that play out over the course of the season, which you've already kind of noted. And then there's a focal secondary arc for each episode that gets resolved by the end of the episode, typically. And all of the other ones continue to play out in the background at the same time, but don't get resolved. And they each have a chance to come forward and be featured in an individual episode and have some sort of resolution by the end of the episode. So the audience gets the satisfaction of some kind of resolution at the end of every episode, and then a nice mini climax cliffhanger kind of thing that opens the door to the next unresolved kind of the 3 to 5 story arcs that you're engineering that go through the whole season, which is again why it's nice to have that kind of arc for the entire season sorted out and where all the characters are. Because if you go, it would be unusual, I think. I'm trying to think of an example. Can anybody here think of an example where episode to episode completely different characters are featured, and some other characters that you've gotten to know in the previous episode aren't even on screen, like aren't featured at all? Like, other than the stuff like Black Mirror that's built around that entirely. Like, that's the whole thing, is that it's vignettes. Each episode's a contained story. But in an ongoing narrative that rolls through the entire season, I'm not sure. Anybody got any ideas?
The Bear, the last season of The Bear was a little bit like that.
The Bear still has that cohesive kind of background arc for the whole cast. They feature individual characters,
Yeah.
but you can still see the other characters kind of rolling around in the background and interacting in most cases. And that's the typical formula. Everybody has a chance to kind of take the spotlight and we follow their story for a little while, but there's always the overarching story that's rooted with the one focal character that the actor Jeremy plays, right? The series is really from his point of view, from his perspective, even though it's a nice ensemble with lots of well-drawn characters in it.
But this last season, he wasn't in like every episode. I mean, maybe just briefly, which it struck me, which I noticed watching it, right? Because I actually really like him watching him.
Yeah, it's great.
He did that and they did that in season 2 also. Whenever each character went off to the beginning of the new restaurant opening, and Marcus went off and did the baking stuff in Copenhagen, and then the other 2 characters went off and worked as a sous chef, and they got training, and so each episode was based on those so they did it a bit in season 2, and I really liked it when they did that. I think that's what really helped us see these other characters.
Yeah, and they wouldn't have done that really, really early on in the show, right? Until each one of those characters was fully established and the audience was really familiar with them. And then you get a little more comfortable with wandering off the mainline story and out into these niches that are focused on each individual character. So using that kind of a formula early on can be kind of difficult on an audience because they're not sure whose show it is. Like it wouldn't happen typically until later in the season or season 2 or something like that, where you really 100% dedicate an episode to one character. And the characters that we perceive as being the featured character, the lead characters, aren't even in it necessarily, or just walk through one scene or something like that to create a little bit of connective tissue. But what you've got here sounds unique in that each episode is really dedicated to a different group or a different character or a combination of characters. So it's all about how do you create that cohesion and make the audience feel comfortable by when you do change perspectives from episode to episode? Or is there a way to have at least the first few episodes feature most of the characters at once and then start breaking off as well? And again, I don't know that it's not going to work or anything like that, but it's unusual. And I think the reason that it's unusual is that it's hard on an audience. And unless it's one of those shows like Black Mirror or The Dead Man's Gun, where the only connective link on the dead man's gun is the gun itself. At the beginning of the episode, somebody else picks it up. We follow them for a while. They get killed or they give it away. They sell it, whatever it is. And that's the end of that episode. Next episode, a new person picks it up. Black Mirror, of course, is a totally different story every time, with only the theme of the entire series linking them together. But it's an interesting puzzle to solve as to how to do that. You want to be able to break out quickly, but you want the audience to be familiar with the characters, I think, before you do. Have you been thinking about that?
Yes. And that's why I guess that's the purpose. It's going to be hard to do it for each episode, but for episode 2, we do get to see the knight. We get to see him as a child, pretty much how he became a knight. So he's telling his tale from his own perspective. And there's only one, one character. There's one character that is in it. It's the older knight. It's his surrogate father, but we don't learn that until the 2nd episode.
And how big's the cast?
Oh, it's huge.
Okay.
15. But we see them all in the pilot, but we're not going to see. I mean, it's impossible to put that many characters into each episode.
Yeah.
So we're going to see the villains every time. because they're going to play into the A story. Maybe not. Maybe we won't see them every single time, but we see them. We see them at the very end, or not the very end, but we see them in Act 4 doing something that reminds the audience that they're the bad guys, and that because there's like three or four bad guys, and we know who a couple of them are, but we don't know how another one is infiltrating. And so there are antagonists on the trip that's going to try and sabotage the pilgrimage, and those are the ones that are directly tied to the summoning of the demons, which they already summoned one. They summoned one in the pilot, so we clearly know the motive of the antagonist when we start the journey.
And which characters do you think are the featured in the pilot? I know you've got all of them in there, but which ones carry the load for that contained narrative?
The Knight, the Squire, Chaucer, Marion, which is a Robin Hood type figure, and then that's probably about it. There's 4 or 5 main characters, but the Knight and Chaucer are your 2 main leaders.
With the other 10 or 11 characters passing through, like visible but not featured.
Yes. And we'll eventually get to their tales, but I just need I need to flush out the rest of the story in order to figure how those other characters are going to play in.
Yeah, I would think that's the priority right now, is to figure out what the season as a whole looks like in greater detail, so you can figure out when each character kind of steps forward and takes the limelight, and can be assured that it's seamless and easy on the audience, that it would make sense, so that the tail end of every episode kind of tees up the next character, and you can give them a glimpse of what comes next time around in the closing outro, and planting seeds for that next mini story somewhere through each episode as well.
Yeah, and then figuring out how I can talk, because one thing that I think is going to be challenging is it's going to be hard to get every character to tell a tale, especially the younger ones, because there's not much to tell about them. You know, like Marion, the Squire and the Yeoman, which is a woman. I turned her into a woman. They're young, you know, they're only in their 20s. And so even though they've got, like, Marion is actually, you know, she's going to get her powers, but she doesn't get them until a certain age, which is coming soon. She should be getting her powers any day, but I want to do a tribute to that. And then Larkin discovers that he's half mortal, but we don't discover that until later. But those things are not enough for them to tell a tale about their lives, because we already kind of see their story, because they are so young. There's not much to tell about them.
Well, I mean, those sounds like pretty big stories, being only half mortal and having magical powers. There's got to be a context for that, or background.
Well, I mean, as far as playing into, you know, I mean, I've got plans for their A story, you know, but they're still gonna, even though they've got their own story, it's not enough to tell an individual tale to where we get flashbacks.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Sure. Well, I trust your instincts there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like my brain keeps coming back to the outline of the season, and that would be really important, to the point where I would recommend setting aside that pilot and not letting it inform anything on its own, coming back to it and repurposing it or rejigging it however you need to. But don't let the pilot bully the rest of the season, because the rest of the season, in theory, should be more important than just the pilot episode. And the pilot is the sample of what they can expect, you know, as the season unfolds. It's going to be one of the more important things in your package when you talk to people, for sure. But if they read the pilot and like it, and then read the outlines for the rest of the episodes, and it doesn't feel cohesive and doesn't feel well put together, then that's obviously going to hurt your chances of moving forward. So it's tough for me here today, not having had a chance to read much of it and know exactly all of these other threads that are kind of getting woven through the season, where to go with it or what to recommend. But if I were working with you, that would be what we would do first, is to make an arbitrary choice as to how many episodes you're going to do. 8's a fine choice. That's typically the one that I go to, and I use 8 for these kind of premier streaming platform type shows until we stumble across something that suggests that 8 isn't the right number. Like maybe you need more room and you need 10, and that's fine. Like when you get that far and you discover that, that's okay. But if you don't come across a reason not to do 8, then I've been working with 8 because of that sequence map, which helps break the greater story, the overall story, into 8 pieces. And then each one of those pieces has got its own contained story with the background threads of all the other supporting character stories also sprinkled through it, which helps the audience feel like this is a cohesive whole. And then at the end of each would be some kind of uptick, mini climax relating to the overarching story. So some kind of escalation or acceleration for the main story at the end of every episode. That and a peek at whatever the next featured character is going to be. Yeah, that would be my starting point. I wasn't sure what we were going to do today, so my wheels are spinning at the moment. I feel kind of stuck in that I wouldn't know what else to recommend to you. You've got your themes kind of sorted, you've got your cast sorted, you have the overall kind of plot sorted. So the only major missing piece is just how does the season as a whole work? And yeah, how can you make that as compelling for your audience as possible without feeling as though they're being torn away from something that they've attached themselves to and then forcing them to kind of get used to somebody else? That can be tough. That was the biggest drawback for the TV series The Wire, which is, considered one of the best, finest written TV series ever, is that every season they basically restarted the show from a completely different new characters, new perspectives, like new set pieces and everything every season. And very few people watched it because that's not the kind of experience that people are used to. And it's asking a lot of them to jump around like that. Unless they go into it knowing that that's going to be the case, like Black Mirror, Dead Man's Gun, that kind of thing. That's the whole conceit of the entire series, is built around that kind of thing. But that's not what you're dealing with here. So it would be, what's the through line arc, and who's going to carry that? From whose perspective is that through line story for all 8 episodes? What does that look like? And then how do all of the other ones relate to it thematically and reinforce it and make it more interesting, more dramatic, more challenging for that one singular hero, all that kind of stuff, all those questions. And based on all of that, whatever you wrote down, if you and I were working on it together, then I'd go back and start picking through all of those details that you wrote on every episode, every character's arc, and and the main arc. Then we'd start piecing together maybe how you could structure it so that it would be as cohesive as possible. That's kind of where I would start. Any thoughts? Any kind of comments there, Jess, based on just what I blabbed at right now? just there.
I've got a lot of work. That's for sure.
Listen, for everybody who's not already kind of playing around in television, let's get real frank here. An entire season of shows is really hard. And in some cases, I've had a lot of people tell me that they feel like it's easier because it's open-ended, and I think that's because they don't have to resolve things every episode, right? Like it can carry on. But that's, I think, misleading and can fool you into thinking it's easier, but it's absolutely not, because there needs to be those mini resolutions every episode or the audience will get frustrated. And then you've got to have a really satisfying one at the end of the season as well. And unlike a closed-ended feature, which is basically one arc with complicating arcs kind of percolating underneath it, but one really strong, streamlined arc, in a TV series, you've got 3 to 5 to sort out every episode. And they've all got to move forward in a logical way. And they all have to relate to one another in a really elegant way too, thematically. So it is a lot of work, which is why they have multiple writers doing these things. They have a whole room of people working on them, on the bigger shows, because they need the help. And there are a lot of moving parts, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't say that to intimidate you, but just to confirm, yeah, there's a lot to kind of work out before typically you would write a full episode. Not that you're wasting your time writing the episode, but you might have to make a lot of changes when you go back and do all the details of the season as a whole. The first episode then might not work and might not set up what you discover later in the best possible way. So that might lay ahead as well. Not trying to be a mind reader or a fortune teller, I should say, but that could happen. You've done a ton of work, though. I can tell that you kind of have the heart of the story in mind. You've got a lot of the big questions answered, and this is really a matter of how you deliver it. How do you package it episodically and as a season and all those things? And all of those questions should be asked, I think, from the perspective of the audience. How do you serve those people as well as possible? And make it fun for them, and make it the kind of thing that they're eager to get back to. I was just talking with somebody the other night. It's been, 2 years now? And the show Severance worked on me because I cannot wait for the next season to start, because that show worked really well. It's some of the best writing I've seen in recent years. And that's the effect that you want your writing to have too, is that people are just jumping up and down waiting for the next episode. Yeah. Michael's asking, are you and your writing partner looking for this to be an American series or something that's actually produced in Europe?
It would be really cool. I think it would be better received in Europe. I could see it maybe being on the BBC would be cool.
Sure. Yeah, it seems like a pretty good fit. And there's a lot of co-productions going on over there. Ireland is really, really active right now and throwing tons of money around in television and film development.
England has a tax incentive too. I think it's 20 or 40. I think it might be 40%.
And knowing that the material that you're adapting is all, rooted really deeply in that region would only help, you'd think, as well.
Yeah, they actually have a Geoffrey Chaucer statue in Canterbury.
Yeah, that's cool.
Which is kind of cool because in the Canterbury Tales, they have a shrine of St. Thomas a Becket, and now they have a shrine of Chaucer in Canterbury.
That's cool.
And my co-writer, her parents went to Canterbury not that long ago and took pictures and sent them to me and stuff like that. So it was cool. And it would also need to be filmed because it's all outdoors.
Yeah.
And the landscape is St. Ives in the Cornwall area all the way to Canterbury. And so it's in the countryside of England. And so it'd really be ideal to shoot there. I think it would be hard to find a location here that would really do it justice. So it'd be really great if it was in the UK.
Yeah, so as you move forward then, it wouldn't be a bad idea to either rekindle your relationship with that producer that flaked out on you. I don't know, or another one, to start conversations with people over there. If not to try to create a partnership, just to do some intel. Who do you know that might be interested in this? Which production companies do this kind of thing? Who's interested in co-productions, both sides of the water? I need partners over there that can handle this production and help shepherd it forward. Who do you know? That would be like the first round of questioning I might ask, so that the person that you're speaking to doesn't feel as though you're asking anything directly of them. It's, low stakes kind of questions. And then try to get introduced to the people that do that kind of thing. And don't show them what you got. Just ask them, what are you looking for? How do you like it packaged? Do you have a preference for number of episodes? Do you have a budget limitation that I should keep in mind as well as we develop these things? Because when I come back to present the work to you, I want to make sure that I'm solving as many problems that you have as I possibly can. I want this to be ideal for you. You could learn a ton. I used to know a woman who worked for the BBC, and I think I've lost track of her, but she was really good. I could ask her questions about what was going on over there, and she was pretty wired into the scene and could point out different companies, different people that were on the move, and was a real wealth of knowledge. I'll see if I can dig her out. She was involved in the local film festival here where I live. And I think she lives in Ireland now, as a matter of fact, and is a producer on maybe Ireland's only daytime TV soap opera. That's kind of, I think that's the story. I'll dig around and see what I can find for you, though. Michael, I think you raised your hand a little while ago. Did you have something to say?
Yeah, sorry, I got dogs barking and kids screaming right now. But I just think that the landscape, the American landscape especially, it's like you have something that you know, I feel like you'd have to sacrifice a lot of the uniqueness and a lot of the differentness in order to like force it into this box in kind of American television. And I'm not an expert, but just, watching a lot of British shows, it seems like they're more willing to make, they're more willing to make risks, and they're more willing to try different things. And especially because the source material is grounded there, they might have a natural inclination to wanting to make that show. And then ultimately, if it works over there, then suddenly American TV is all about it. So, if it works over there, it's like Baby Reindeer or something. It's like, let's bring it over here. Even if it is different and edgy, we're going to take a risk on it. But I feel like the domestic landscape is just, in television especially, is just terrific right now. And if you have an in there, that might be great for you.
Yeah, Eileen points out that Facebook group's got a lot of UK members in it. So that might be a nice place to hang out and see if you can find some connections over there and get a little bit of intel on that. I have to agree, generally speaking, American production companies want to Americanize everything. And that would be really difficult to pull off with such a obviously British story that's got a history in that part of the world. They would, for whatever reason, want to bleed that out of it and replace it with like more Americana. When I first was exposed to what you were playing with, and again, I don't say this to freak you out or try to push you in a completely different direction, but I thought in doing an interpretation of the Canterbury Tales that involved, first of all, that was modern day. There you go. So it's easier to produce immediately, and involved refugees moving from one place to another and sharing stories in a similar way. Just like reinterpreting the central themes of what Canterbury were doing for the modern era, and then commenting on the world around us today through, like instead of the Black Plague, obviously we just went through COVID, and moving from place to place, they wouldn't be knights, they'd be former soldiers or something like that as they were fleeing from one place to another. That, and I don't want this to sound cheap, that would check a ton of boxes for a lot of production companies, even over here in the US, because it would be diverse and it would be speaking to the times, and they seem to be in a hurry to kind of pursue those types of stories too. But that's obviously a totally different project than what you're cooking up right now. And I don't suggest that you have any interest in that or should. But when you're at the foothills of a project and you're kind of staring up at it, at what it might be, it can help. It doesn't scratch the itch of where your passion is and where your heart is. So I don't want to suggest that. But it can help sometimes to think about, yeah, where is the market right now? And who is going to buy this thing? And how can I make it really a simple thing to both market and to produce? And try to kind of solve some of the questions about packaging before you sit down and decide what it is. I'm way off track from where you're at right now, Jess. So this is not me talking about your project at all, but I'm just saying this to the group. Because I say that because I want everybody here to succeed. I honestly want you to stack the deck in your favor. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. In short of cheating, and I don't even know what cheating would be. I don't know what term would turn into when you're trying to come up with a TV concept. But stack the deck in your favor and know exactly how to package something that is irresistible for people who are trying to make a living doing this kind of thing. Yeah, I want to shut up now. Anybody else got any insights on A, where Jess is with her project, because we're assembled here today to try to help her as best we can, and B, on this subject of what are the roots of, like, what is the catalytic kind of process for deciding on which direction you go with a project and what its final form might be as early on in the stage as possible. Everybody, chime in. Stacy?
Hi. So just a couple of things. I'm sorry I had to walk away a couple of times and I missed stuff. So if you guys covered this, I apologize. But when I was doing my my sitcom for my undergrad, I knew what my pilot was going to be, and when I was when I had to turn it into a season and do a Bible and all of that for a pitch deck, I had to figure out, okay, so where do I want my season to be? So, a cliffhanger so that they come back, and then where's my middle episode so that I have people come back after the break for that week that there is no episode or there's a rerun. And so I made those points and then filled in between leading up to each of those points. So if you guys talked about that, then that's great. But if you didn't, that really helped me a lot, Jess, doing that, kind of getting the beginning and the end, what's going to bring them back, the middle, what's going to bring them back, and then filling in everything in between. So that was really helpful. And oh shoot, I forgot the other thing now. What was the other thing?
Well, to help Jess as much as you could and just talk about the origins of a project and how to stack the deck in your favor as far as making it as attractive to the marketplace as possible.
Right. So since graduating, I sit in on the grad panel board for Yorkville University, so that all the grads doing their projects pitch to the panel for practice, but for a grade as well. And it's so interesting because some of them come and it's like their grad project, and they're unprepared and they haven't done the work and they think they're just going to skate by. But some of them are just awesome and they come in with this budget and everything they're going to do to make this happen. And I was never interested in production. It was just all about the writing for me. So listening to these kids, helps me too, because they're talking about all the things that have to be done in order for this to get off the ground. And there's funding, so if there's funding available for that project, they want that to be part of their pitch, so they have to do research and find out. So there are all kinds of things. But I also want to say, Jess, I love this session because I did a 6-month internship at LA Productions in Liverpool. It's Liverpool Academy Productions. It's short for LA Productions, nothing to do with Los Angeles, LA Productions. So that was a lot of fun. And I got to sit in, I'll find my notes. I got to sit in on a, it was like, I think it was the BBC lady, but if it wasn't her, it was one of their top channels. I don't know what it was, but explaining to us at Liverpool Academy Productions and others on the call what they were looking for. And that was great. And I took tons of notes. So I'll find those notes. These things happen all the time. But I'm also wondering, sorry, just to get back to my point about LA Productions. I just wonder if there's somebody I can talk to, because he left there and went out on his own, and he would probably love this project. So I'm just thinking maybe I could just, I don't know, talk to him. I kept in touch with him, so we're on WhatsApp, so I could always say, hey, there's this project, but not until you're ready.
Yeah, or
so that's all I have.
That's fantastic, Stacey. That's such a kind offer to help connect people. That's what I'm talking about. And as far as Jess, you don't have to be prepared if you frame the conversation in a different way. Like if you take that meeting as just to kind of getting to know you and requesting for information and just to talk to somebody that's got more experience in that area, in that field, in that region of the world. And don't go in saying, I've got something ready to pitch. First of all, the temperature in that goes down because there's less pressure, right? He doesn't feel as though you're going to come at him and try to sell him anything. If you go to him and say, I'd really love to pick your brain for a few minutes if you can afford the time, that'd be great. And then you just let him talk most about his experience and how he's packaged things and what he thinks that region is looking for. I think you'd come away with a ton of really valuable information that could then inform how you put together, again, your whole season and package everything before you maybe make the bigger commitments to writing it. So yeah, I don't think you need to wait until you've got a script if you're just out there for intel and to make contact with people. Who knows, maybe you two would hit it off and then he'll become a regular contact of yours as well. And when you do get further down the road, maybe he'd be willing to read it or connect it with the right people, and help shepherd it along the way. So that was amazingly kind of you, Stacy. I'm really excited. If that's possible, then yeah, I'm encouraging you to do it. Jess, how does that all sound to you?
Yeah, I mean, that would, like what Jordan said, that's extremely kind of you. Yeah, as far as having a conversation, the conversation about picking his brain and just building a relationship is a lot more comforting than actually pitching my project.
Yep.
Because because I don't have the whole season flushed out, and so as far as what I've got figured out, I've shared with you guys. I know what my midpoint is, I know what my finale is, but as far as like what happens in between and how these stories are going to be told and then interwoven into the main story is what I'm currently having to figure out. Like as soon as I get done, because what we've been working on the pilot is getting the dialogue to be a blend of Old English and Modern English, and we've been using ChatGPT to help out with that. And Elizabeth has recently read it, and she said the language really works.
That's great.
The dialogue works, and we have some terms that are 100% from that time period, but we've used it in a way to where the context clues will explain what that word means, so you get an idea of what the word means without even having to look it up. Yeah. And the historical references, again, it would be basically UK. I mean, they would get the historical references more than somebody in America. Like they're going to understand why we chose Cornwall. They'll understand why like some of our characters are named after historical figures back then. And so that I think would be better received. But yeah, having a conversation just about the industry and about how this project how it could work, and stuff like that would definitely be something I would rather have a conversation about than pitching the concept.
Yeah, so consider this, and I recommend this for everybody. Like most people assume that they're not ready to have these conversations because they don't have a really polished product quite finished. And even when they do, they're nervous about it going into a pitch mode. Rightly so. It's uncomfortable. Nobody really enjoys sales. But if you take it on in a different way, and all this conversation is just asking questions and getting kind of advice from somebody like a temporary mentor, like maybe a mentor of just one conversation.
Yeah.
First of all, the one conversation is probably worth it. But if it develops into a relationship, then you get multiples, making it exponentially more valuable. And if you do end up developing a bit of a relationship with them because they could take an interest in you or your project or both and are happy to kind of help you along the way with the time that they have available, then eventually they're going to keep asking for updates. How you doing? You can say, well, I'm now this far. And as soon as you say I'm done and I'm ready to go, don't say that you want to pitch it. I'll bet you half the time they ask you. So let me know, pitch it to me. or let me read it. And you've made your way into that position in a much more comfortable way now with somebody that you're familiar with, and they're not just a stranger, with a cold face that you suddenly have to be perfect with, right? You've got a relationship with them now. So if you bend a couple words and you stumble here and there, no big deal. They know you, you know them, and it's really, really comfortable. So that's kind of how I would pitch it to everybody, how I would tackle that. And you can't do that too many times. You can't talk to too many people. If it doesn't happen and they don't want to talk to you, no big deal, you move on. But if they do, having all of these people available to you, and each one of them a unique resource center of sorts, is only going to help you understand the market, understand the process, understand your potential collaborators, all that stuff at a much deeper level. So I encourage everybody to have these conversations. I love it all the time. Like, I get spoiled rotten when I get to talk with Ted Ramey, because he's making stuff all the time. He's busy in the gaming industry now because he's got the face of a horror icon. So they're using him for quite a few games. But he just shot a feature, and he's going back to LA to shoot another one. And I asked him about how those deals come together. How did he get hired? How did he read? How did he meet the producer? All these kinds of things. And I keep learning a little bit more about how his corner of the industry operates and how all of his connections do business with one another. So now I feel like I could walk into the room with any one of those people and not look like an idiot. I might not know exactly what I'm talking about, but I would know the lay of the land well enough that I could hold my ground. So yeah, have as many of those conversations as you can, as early as you can, and make them just about being a mini mentorship, asking questions, getting advice, that kind of thing, with no hard sell at the end, no expectations for a sale of any kind. Just talking with folks, doing the same thing that you want to do. Easy, easy, easy.
Yeah.
Stacey, what do you got?
Hi, Eileen, I had her hand up. Eileen, did you go already?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't notice Eileen's hand go up. Okay. Eileen, you want to go first then?
Oh, sorry, I said to go ahead. Really, you kind of just covered what I was thinking. Like, I felt like Jess kind of lost her way a little there, instead of being like, you seemed a little like I was going to ask Jess what would make you feel excited about continuing on your journey here. And I think what you just said, Jordan, kind of gave her some wings there.
I hope so. And the kind of clarity that you might come away from that conversation with could be really useful too, because we're all guessing, right? When we're doing spec scripts, we're just guessing what everybody wants. But if you're working, happen to be able to talk to somebody that's constantly looking because they're in production, that's their job, they'll tell you what they're looking for. And then you get to choose whether you do it or not. You get to choose whether you can tailor your project to suit them. Because in most cases, when you get to that point, you're going to have to tailor your project to somebody. They say these days that every pitch is different depending on who you're pitching it to, because everybody's got slightly different wants and needs. So anyway, I think you can learn a great deal and maybe feel a lot more secure about where you go next if you got a little intel from somebody like that. Sorry, Jess.
Yeah, that's the reason. Yeah, that's what was kind of disheartening about the one producer, because he was from the UK. It was more like a mentorship. I just pitched him the concept and he liked it. And I started this project because of him, and he did take me under his wing and help guide me towards everything. And then when I had everything ready, he was gone, and he's the one that got me my manager based on this project. And so like now everything's pretty good, and I have no concept to pitch to him after building that relationship for 1.5 years.
Yeah,
so
that happens too.
So it's nice to, like, I've gotten I've already had that kind of relationship. So moving into another relationship with somebody, I'm confident in that kind of building, not like just pitching the concept cold like that is not my style. So more finding someone to where it's more of a mentorship is definitely something that's more authentic to my being, like, of who I am.
Yeah, I think everybody is way more comfortable with that kind of a pitch than the cold one, a mercenary type pitch. And Yeah, don't feel bad about that. I don't want you to feel bad that he wandered off on you. That happens all the time, and that's certainly not a statement about you. These folks, producers, are spinning multiple plates all the time, and then at any given point, they'll get pulled in a different direction because their world is constantly on fire. You know.
Yeah, he's got a lot going on.
Yeah, yeah,
A
sure.
lot.
And on the opposite side, I want to say that, you know, I just described that type of person has several plates spinning at any time. You can cultivate multiple mini mentorships with multiple people and have them kind of simmering in the background, and then use whichever one is to your best advantage at any given time too. So nobody should think that they can only do this once and have their primary kind of go-to person. No, the more the merrier. You know, if you had 10 of those, imagine the information that you could get and how much more secure you'd feel in your decisions with that kind of a selection of feedback available to you. And then you'd have 10 options who could potentially ask to read it when you get it finished too. So I don't think there's any downside to put in a little time on doing this regularly. You know, they say for every minute you write, you should be reading, but I think there's a third category there too, which is that somewhere in there, every minute that you write and read, you should be kind of speaking with people that could potentially be a partner or a collaborator for you, or just a mentor that helps, again, shepherd it into the right room in front of the right person. Because otherwise, and this is most often the case, you spend your time siloed, maybe with your immediate friends, a community like this, it's still a silo of sorts. You work. A year later, you got a script, and now you're cold starting your outreach. You know, you've got it, and now you got nothing. You're starting from scratch, and that's when you often have to get into those scary conversations with absolute strangers, because you have to start somewhere. But if you've been planting seeds and having low stakes conversations with people for that whole year, you're going to be in great shape by the time you get that script done and ready to deliver. So
that's where I feel like I am.
Thanks for joining us, Michael. We'll talk to you again. Yeah, I think you are too. So I'm disappointed I can't be of more use to you today, because I really did appreciate you volunteering to do this. But I think that's where you're at, is that it's time to start shaking hands and kissing babies out there and see who you can meet. And I think that you're going to find one person that could really accelerate the curve on what this becomes and where it could go. Because it really does sound like it's a natural fit for that marketplace over there, and those production staff over there would know exactly what to do with it and would appreciate the story for what it is too, because it's likely going to be a hard sell in North America. Yeah. Anybody else got any thoughts on that? Stacy, your hand's back up, I think.
Yeah. I just wanted to say about, talking to people. I love being able to say, hey, I'm a student with such and such. I'd love to have an informational interview. And most people say yes. I've never had anyone say no. Some students did, but I love that. Informational interviews, they'll talk to you about what they're looking for. And shoot, there was something else, and now I can't think what it was. Oh, sorry, I wish I had written it down. It'll come to me. You know what? It'll come to me, and I'll send you a message.
Sure. Yeah. Or Jess, if it's related with her. Yeah. Mm. I find, and especially if you have the conversation focused on their career, right? If you come at them like, hey, Mr., Ms., Mrs., whatever, I really appreciate your career. I'm really interested in the fact that you've worked in this space. Could you tell me about how you got there and what you're working on right now? I really appreciate, having those insights, blah, blah, blah. You're getting them to basically talk about themselves, which is an easy lift. Everybody loves to talk about themselves, and they don't have to do any research. There's no prep work. They just show up and start talking. And again, really, it could potentially be loaded with absolutely invaluable information for you. And the possibility that they'll become a friendly ally of yours moving forward. I don't see any downside. The worst thing they're going to do is say no. Most people don't even have the time to be mean. They're just going to say no, so you don't even get into the conversation. So there's really, really very little downside. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you get doing it, and the more polished your layup is as to how you kind of enter the conversation and position them and your relationship with them. So practice makes perfect, of course. So yeah, I encourage you, and I'd love to hear about what happens when you start reaching out and talking to people, because I think the whole community would really, really value knowing how you did it and what it did for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you've done lots of stuff, Jess. You know what you're talking about. So I just think it's a matter of grooming some more allies. You know, like I'm a horrible introvert. It may not seem that way, but I'm an Olympic level introvert. And it was only because of my theater days and the fact that I backed my way into retail and car sales that I got used to talking with people. This is not a natural skill for me. I'm one of the most private people you're ever going to meet, but it doesn't look that way because when you see me, I'm kind of broadcasting outward. And people would say that about me when I was on stage in theater too. Well, this guy's obviously an extrovert, but no, quite the opposite. Nope. As soon as I'm up stage, I go home. But it's the skill you can develop. Anybody can do it. It just takes some practice.
Yeah.
And you should be confident enough to talk to anybody because you've already done lots of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I talk to any of my friends that are non-industry people. When I tell them what outreach is like, they're like, you're describing dating. And I'm like, I know, and I hate dating. So, and I'm not good at it. So I think, the confidence part, I think is my issue. And just, I don't know.
It makes perfect sense. Nobody's really automatically comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody hit the click. Here we go. Yeah, that's a funny kind of preset that's on Skype. The Greek auditorium. Yeah, it's not a natural for most people. It's not a natural skill for most of us. Public speaking, sales, those kinds of things where you're the focus of attention is like everybody's worst nightmare. But there's ways to do it. And if you break it into these kind of gradual introductions to people with low impact, like low pressure conversations first, interviews, I'm a student, I'm just starting out, those kinds of things, most people will take it easy on you because you're setting it up such that they know you're not going to be demanding anything from them. It's not like the cliche where you walk up and say, will you read my screenplay? Like the client that I just had to fire, it's not like that. So it's real easy on them. And I enjoy it now. I'm getting much more used to it. And I'm not sure I have the time to do it, but my plan now is to start reaching out to people with channels on YouTube, so that are having success in the direct to audience kind of lane that we talk about. For anybody that wasn't in on that conversation, I'm observing that these days with the changes going on in the industry, that there is kind of a new option for people who are storytellers. The traditional way is that you're the content creator, you're the creative person that writes the script, and you go into the industry and the industry helps you find your audience. So I'm looking at it like a triangle, but there's another lane, which is you're the content creator and you go to the audience first and build your audience and then leverage that to get into the industry. And that's happening quite a bit right now on YouTube. And there's a couple channels there that I find really charming, that I can tell they're just goofing around with their own personal interests, and they've packaged personal interests that they're already passionate about and some skills that they've gathered over the years, and they've just kind of backed into this funny little product that's going over really well. So I'd like to bring them in and say, hey, where was the nexus of this project, and when did you know it started to get momentum, and how did you kind of figure out the last couple of pieces of the puzzle, and where did this ascension begin? Like, where did it really start to take hold? And just listen to them talk about the process, because I think, anyway, I find it really insightful, because this is all kind of mysterious to all of us. Like, how did anybody get where they are, and what works, what doesn't, that type of thing. Yeah, so we'll see if I've got the time to do it, but that's what I want to be able to do. So I'll be flexing more of those muscles if I have the opportunity. Anyway, I've been talking too much. Anybody else got any kind of comments on Jess's project? What might be an interesting kind of thing for Jess to look at in future? Starting a project out and the packaging of it, these outreach kind of subjects that we've just talked about. Any insights or comments from anybody? I'd love to hear what everybody here has got to say about this stuff, and not just me.
I think you've got a great opportunity here sorry.
No, you're up. You're up.
Okay, sorry. there's a little bit of a delay. I don't mean to talk over top of someone. Sorry about that. I think this is a great opportunity just to just keep making progress with this project. You can go back to the guy who, you know, just kind of disappeared. The guy I kept in touch with at LA Productions, he left to do a reality show in Paris about dancing. And when I was at LA Productions, he went through my projects and loved one of them. It was based on a murder trial I did when I was a court reporter. And so while I was at LA Productions, we started developing that, and it was a very exciting time, but I was like, yeah, it's never going to happen. But I was writing it out, you know, and then he came to me and told me, I'm going to Paris, I'm sorry. So it just kind of died. But we kept in touch because he still loves that project. He's always got something on the go, but he keeps telling me he loves this project, and not a lot of time has passed, but I keep going back to it and I keep making it better. I keep making it better. So when he's ready, it's going to be ready. So, but it's not the only thing I'm working on. It's just one of the things I'm working on, but baby steps, and then you'll get there.
Yeah, nicely said.
Unless it's the main project you're working on, of course, and then you're taking giant steps, but you know what I mean.
It's definitely one of my main ones. Like, I work on it twice a week with my co-writer. So, yeah.
How many projects is everybody working on at
So
once right now?
Oh, geez.
3 for Jess.
I've got it. Yeah, I've got 3. I've got 3 good ones. Yeah, it's a 4th and a 5th kind of in the wings. The one for Christian's probably my 6th. Yeah. But I've got 3 main ones.
And Eileen, I didn't see your fingers. They were out of my camera view. How many did you say?
No, I'm kidding. I didn't do that. Well, I have 2 that I'm polishing, one that I'm going to start polishing when I'm done finished with the 2 that I'm polishing. And then I have a couple that I want to start that I haven't even started.
Yeah, it's the norm. I think the average is 3. I like that number to jump back and forth with. Whenever they cool off, you can jump to one of the other projects and get re-inspired, and then go back to it when you've regained some perspective on it. And also, when you start doing your outreach, it's good to have options as well and not put all your eggs in one basket. So Brooks likes to say that you shouldn't be selling any more than 3 at a time, but you could have, you know, a shelf of 10 or 12 in the background there that you've already worked on. But in order to keep your pitching clear, you know, and not messy, then just focus on 3 at a time at the maximum. If somebody asks you about something else or tells you that they're looking for something else that you've already written, then obviously you're going to bring that up too. But yeah, I think that's really, really good so that you can jump back and forth and keep moving forward whenever you hit an obstacle or whenever you lose your inspiration on something. So that's the norm. Maureen, we haven't heard from you. How many are you cooking right now? Is Maureen there? No, might not be there. Yeah, I've got 3. So I've got 3. I've got the game show project that I'm working on, and then I've got 2 scripts that I'm writing with Ted. But I've got 8 concepts that are somewhere in early stages, and 1 that's got a first rough draft of that 8. So yeah, there's lots. And you've got to be able to pivot to wherever the opportunities are. So again, the more things that you've kind of got cooking, the more opportunities that might be out there for you. I just think sorry?
Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought you were sorry. Go ahead.
Please do cut me off.
No, I was just curious about your pawn shop story.
Yeah,
I read it and I've always thought about it and I always forget to ask you.
Well, thanks again for reading it. It's not even one of the ones that are on the front burner at the moment because I can't find time to work on it. I've got collaborators on all the other projects that I'm working on, so I want to do them, respect the time that they've invested in me. So those are the ones I'm focused on right now. But it was like the turning point in my writing career when I started to sort all this stuff out and got a little more professional in my attitude about things. So it's definitely not going to die. I'm going to go back to it. That's the project called The Kings of Contraband. And I fell in love with that project, and I probably loved it too much when I was writing it, which made it difficult for me to have a healthy perspective on it, because I know that I have to go in there and kill a bunch of babies, and I know that I need to rebuild Act 3. I didn't quite have my act together. I didn't have the knowledge that I do now. So I'd like to go back and gut it and rebuild it. I'm really happy with about 50% of it, but a good chunk of it's got to be rebuilt, I think, to be able to sell. Really proud of some sequences in there and a few scenes in there and a couple of the characters that I've got in there, but structurally and thematically, it's weaker than it should be and can be. So I got to go back and rebuild that one. But right now I'm getting paid to make a game show. So I'm doing that instead. And I'm grateful for that work, even though it's a silly project and it's kind of a silly company that frustrates the hell out of me on occasion. It's a decent gig, and that'll be a place where I do business probably for as long as I'm in the industry. I can't seem to shake them off. I was joking the other day that this is the same company that I've told to go to hell, and I quit twice now, and they keep hiring me back. So somehow me telling them off makes them respect me more. And then it's the same company that my wife works for as an actual editor, which is a ton of work, editing reality TV shows. Like 5 to 8 cameras rolling, and she's got to cut all that stuff through. So when I go over there and look at her editing suite with all the different cameras synced together as she's scrubbing through the timeline, it's like, oh, geez, that's not my brain. I can't do that kind of thing. But it's fun, and I may end up to go down to LA when it's getting shot and being a kind of field producer for it, which would be fun.
What game show is it?
It's kind of it was born out of an idea that would be an escape room where 2 people would compete to see who could get out of the escape room faster.
Oh, that's cool.
But that got shot down because OnlyFans, I can't explain it to you exactly why, but we said, okay, why? When their first round of notes was, you can't use the term escape room. You can't refer to that industry. It can't look like an escape room. Like they just, all kinds of these things. And we said, okay, fine, but why? And in a roundabout way, using a lot of really stiff legalese language, in their mind, there's some kind of connection between escape rooms and human trafficking.
Wow.
Like, being trapped in a room and that kind of thing. And OnlyFans, if nothing else, is really sensitive to their legal obligations. For example, here's another wild thing. When we're doing interview type shows, which my wife works on regularly, they just have OnlyFans creators and they interview them. There's a couple of variations on shows like that. You're not allowed to refer to anything that happened to them in their life before they turned 18. If you're talking to a race car driver that happens to have an OnlyFans page, in fact, you just did one on a motorcycle racer, a professional motorcycle racer, and you would think that you'd have a natural conversation like, as a kid, my dad raced and I loved motorcycles and that's why I raced. Nope. It's like they don't exist before they turn 18. You can't go there.
So OnlyFans isn't just a sex site?
Yeah, it's a whole platform.
I didn't know that.
80-90% of all the material on their platform is adult in nature. Yes, 100%. But then they have a streaming site called OFTV. And I worked for a company out of Chicago that builds shows and produces and actually shoots shows for them using only OnlyFans talent. And when I started, they said, well, you're not allowed to do anything overtly sexual, which was hilarious coming from a company like that. We're like, okay. So I built for them a cooking competition show called This Is Fire, using the lingo that the kids use, right? And we did a season and they liked it. My favorite piece of feedback ever was one of the executives said, hey, this is like a real show. What do you mean by that? Yes, it's because I basically borrowed everything and they don't have the imagination to do anything too innovative. So we just built a show that exists out there and made it theirs. And then by season 3, they wanted to do something more interesting with it. And ever since then, it's been nothing but porn stars competing in this cooking competition show. All right, whatever. And
That's
then,
funny.
and then I created a dating show for them, and it was really unique, and it was not based on any other show that exists out there. I was really proud of the concept. And because they couldn't compare it to anything else, they fought me on every detail. It was just absolutely the most unpleasant, one of the most unpleasant experiences I've ever had. And it wasn't worth the fight. And they've just bled out all of the more interesting aspects of it. And so very little of the concept that I created for them survived, but I got credit as being the creator of that one. So that's nice. But they just decided one day they wanted a game show. So now we're doing that. So we have nothing to do with who would be on it. They get to pull their own creators, and in many cases, they're adult performers, which is interesting to say the
I
least.
think that's actually really funny. I was actually on a game show once 110 years ago called Card Sharks, which
I know that show. Yeah, sure.
I was on it. I even have my stuff right here from, wait. This was my badge.
That's great.
Oh,
That's
cool.
awesome.
It was fun. I mean, it was crazy fun, but I like the idea of having porn stars on a game show.
Well, you can tune in whenever you like on OFTV because they're all over the place there. And so it's This Is Fire and Mismatch is the dating show that I built for them, and they're still going.
Oh,
And
okay.
they're of wildly different quality from episode to episode because they've got really sloppy camera operators. And you just ask my wife about what a nightmare it is to edit everything together. But so they decided they wanted a game show, and then we've learned that it can't be an escape room concept. So we rejigged it to say that it's just different puzzles. Two competitors at a time. There's reasons for that. They don't want to queue up too many creators, and they don't want to hold people for multiple days. So it's only two at a time. The first one tries to complete a puzzle while the other one watches and creates color commentary, either cheering them on or yelling at them and badgering them, whatever it is. And then the other one competes, different puzzle, and they get a certain amount of time to solve them. Any time they don't use turns into a cash bonus. They do 2 rounds of that, and then the final round, they compete in the same stage, in the same space, in kind of like a drag strip with 3 challenges in a row, side by side. So they can watch each other and they compete simultaneously. And if one of the two performs well enough, they can win all of the money that the other one won and steal their jackpot as well.
Nice.
So far, they seem happy with it. I'm basing it on a couple of low-cost game shows that appear in Britain and UK, like Australia and New Zealand, where they don't have tons of money. They don't have these big arena-style game shows or what they call the shiny floor game shows, which are really popular over here that cost like $1 million an episode. They don't have any, I shouldn't say that. They have more money than any network. They're bigger and more richer than things like Disney or Amazon, but they don't want to spend any money. So we have to keep it really, really modest. What's fun is that they are not sensitive at all to viewership. They don't seem to care if anybody's watching these shows. So we just kind of get to do what we do, and it's a very strange alternate reality, but it's good experience. And I've been fortunate enough to be connected with people who have done really high-profile reality TV shows that also work with them, like one of the producers of Project Runway. Like he did that for over a decade. He knows everybody and everything there is to know about reality TV, and he's a really fun guy. So I got to work with him for 6 months, and that was a really valuable experience for me too. So when I get down to LA, I've got lots of people I can knock on the door of and hang out with nowadays, which is nice. Anyway, so that's going on. Yeah, as usual, thanks for listening to me babble on. But
Fun.
maybe the point is you never know where your career is going to take you. And if you're willing and kind of comfortable enough to pivot and just take everything on like it's in a kind of a curious, where might this take me? Maybe I can learn some interesting skills over here. Maybe there's some nice people I can work with and grow from over there. Just every opportunity is an adventure. And some of them don't work out, and some of them involve really despicable people, but you'll smell them out real fast. And then I encourage everybody to feel comfortable enough to say no if it just doesn't feel right for you. Because everybody has, but I've had a couple of those too. And you get smarter at sniffing them out as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Thanks
folks.
so
Well,
much. This was really as usual, just a big treasure trove of wisdom and tidbits. Thank you so much, Jordan and Jessica.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, random little fragments of information here and there. Yeah, well, I'm really happy to be of help to anybody for any reason. Again, I want to say thank you to Jess for being willing to let us kind of crash around on her project. In future, I'm going to do these things regularly. We've only done 2, and the first one was kind of completely just off the cuff. Now I'm starting to map them out. But in future, for all the new ones that come out, we're going to ask that everybody come to a forge if they'd like to be a guinea pig with something that they're just starting. That way we can kind of go through some of the processes that I do to help kind of clarify what the project is and what it means to the writer, and help them kind of use it as a platform for developing their personal voice. So I've got lots of kind of exercises that I use with that. I'd like to share that with the crowd too. So just keep that in mind if you ever want to be a subject of a mini forge like this. Then as soon as you have an idea, if you're willing to share it with the rest of the community, then I'd love to help you kind of develop it a little bit and see what we can make happen from that.
Just an idea? Like
Yeah.
just an idea. Nope.
Doesn't have to be anything. You don't have, you can come with nothing. You can show up in the moment and say, I don't even have anything, and we can build from there. And I'm happy to do that.
Wow.
That's a little less disruptive to the process than kind of tearing apart something that already sort of exists. And that's I've been asked not to do that anymore because it can freak people out when we gut it. And so new or newish ideas, happy to do it, and would be honored to be able to do that with any of you.
Oh, Jordan, what was that template that you talked about?
It's
Where
called
could I find that?
the sequence map. I'll send it to you.
Okay,
I'd like
perfect.
to see it too. Will you put it in
Ooh, nice.
Buzztown?
Yeah, okay, let me write that down.
And then if you could tag me, that would be great. Just so it doesn't get lost in the feeds. Sometimes I get lost in the feeds because people will post so much, and I don't have time to look every single time.
And anybody here that knows that this thing is going to get sent out, if you don't happen to find it, then again, don't hesitate to reach out to me and say, hey, where is that thing? Maybe I'll convert it into a PDF so you can read it, and I can easily send it off to everybody.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
That would be great.
Okay, that probably won't happen till the weekend because my world's on fire right now. I got to go make a game show, but I'll be happy to do that over the weekend.
It is the weekend, by the way.
Not for me quite yet, but anyway, we're getting
Okay,
there.
have
But,
fun with that, Jordan. Good to see everybody.
yeah, good to see everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
Have a
Jess.
good weekend.
Have a great
Thanks,
weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
You too. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.